Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness, according unto the multitude of thy tender mercies. Blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. My name is Andre Battles. 42 years of living, and I haven't figured it out yet. I know that's funny to some of you that are years older than I. The reality simply is, as I've lived, I've struggled. One of the greatest, strongest, most aggravating thing that I've dealt with in my life was the spirit of lust. You know, adult content. Watching scantily dressed women on the internet. And before the internet, there were magazines. Jet Magazine, page 43. Playboy. But nowadays we have the computers. We have our cell phone devices. And all that really means is that there's more access today than there was 25 or 30 years ago. As a young man, I was told to go and look for something in the car. When I went into the back trunk, that's where I saw them. This box of magazines that changed my life. And for 34 years after that, the struggle has been real. I won't lie to you. It hadn't been easy. Knowing that there have been times when, like David, here in Psalms chapter 51, that I prayed, and and there were times when even during the prayers I thought that, finally, I've gotten over this problem. There were moments or seasons where I felt like this is finally over. And a week later, a month or two later, there have been times when I've had a full 12-month cycle free of this demon, just to find myself caught back up in its grips. And of course, the question then is, will there ever be deliverance? Will there ever be freedom from this? Will I ever have complete and total control over this problem? Now, there are many that believe that this is a problem that only men experience. But in my 15 years of social media ministry, I have come to understand that this is a problem for both male and female. No one wants to think that they are stuck in a situation where there's no hope. I mean, let's be honest. Everywhere you look, someone's struggling with something. So you figure you just get your ticket. Someone punched it for you. You didn't ask for the struggle. I mean, it's as if you just came into this life with this struggle. My desire is to take you through Psalms 51, just the first 3 verses, and show you a bit more of what David meant with every word, with every feeling, with every disappointment, and with the shame that he was no doubt operating in when he prayed this prayer. Subscribe, follow, hit the share button, comment. I will want to know your thoughts. It would be beneficial to me as a minister so that I can understand how to serve God's people. And that's you. Even if you're not struggling with this problem, either way, share this video. Take it to your social media platforms and post links there. Text the link to your family members and friends. I don't even mind if you shared with your minister. Why? Who knows? There may be an opportunity there for this ministry to come and share our story, the story of Jesus Christ in me, with you. So let's go to Psalms 51, and we're going to go to verse 1. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. according unto the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. There's something about sin that makes us feel dirty. And I don't have to explain that. You and I have lived long enough to have experienced it on our own. There's this feeling of emptiness. And of course, initially, once we do whatever it is that we were tempted to do, we may feel a little bit of pleasure, satisfaction maybe even. But somewhere along the line, if we know anything about God, we begin to feel a separation from Him. If we've only ever learned how to pray, then for some reason this pleasure or this joy that we just experienced causes a desire for prayer to go out the window. I've heard many people say that once they've fallen into a particular thing, they no longer have interest in reading the Word of God. They don't want to pray. The energy or the encouragement is not there. There's no enthusiasm. They tend to isolate. And this is the truth because I've done all of these things. And one of the things that we do when we fall into sin is that we jump deeper, either into that same sin, or we adjust and we find more sin to enter into the life. It's interesting that David asked God to have mercy on him. I want you to understand what this means. When you ask for mercy, when David asks for mercy, he's saying to God, I need some of your undeserved favor. I need the compassion that you have for a guilty soul like my own. Why is this important to know? David had to come to the understanding, first and foremost, that he was guilty. Now, how you become aware is important. If you aren't aware of how David became aware, then it was the prophet Nathan that came to him and made him aware that what you did was wrong. And if you didn't know what David did, David stole a man's wife, got her pregnant, and then killed that man to keep what he did a secret. God forbid, no one under the sound of my voice has ever committed a crime such as murder. However, the guilt and the shame, the isolation and the fear of showing yourself back out in public or even around church-going people is all the same. Because the sin makes you feel as if everyone knows. It's as if it's tacked to your shirt like a name tag. I know, again, I've been there. Whenever you ask God to forgive you, it should come from the place of deep conviction that there's a separation now having taken place. Because at once there was unity. There was togetherness. You feel the separation. It's as if someone opens the door on a cold winter day and that draft comes flooding into that home. You immediately ask him to close the door and hurry because you don't want the warmth of the inside to be ushered out. That's what sin feels like. The devil never tells you that it feels like this. He only tells you that it feels like this, the pleasure part. And in reality, the pleasure is short-lived. But I want you to stop and think about the fact that conviction, which is again an understanding that there is a separation, is actually a blessing to you. Because it allows you to know, like the thermostat in your home, that the temperature's off and that it perhaps needs to be adjusted. Notice that this mercy that David is soliciting is according to the loving kindness of God. Now, you may not be a father or mother, but every last one of us have either someone we call father or mother or a guardian as the equivalent. Depending upon how close that relationship was, you may have done something. In fact, I know you did. And when you did whatever it was that you did, your parents, of course, were upset with you. You may have interpreted their anger or frustration with you as them not loving you. I've been there. I have parents of my own. And although our parents weren't perfect and they perhaps disciplined us in anger, we must come to understand that frustration with your child or frustration with someone that you care for, someone that you oversee, comes from a place or desire to make sure that they are well and that they don't get into any trouble that you as the parent can't save them from. Now, I want you to see God in that same manner. God's desire for you when he asks us not to sin is so that we don't experience the suffering that comes with it. Now, God doesn't get angry. Yes, he is disappointed, but he's hurt because you have chosen to make a separation. And because you are aware of this, because we were aware that our parents weren't satisfied with our behavior, we would come in a manner to appease them. Mommy or Daddy. Our voice would get a little bit more intimate, right? And you know this because you pray like this. You know that you were wrong. In fact, you were caught red-handed and you knew that what you were doing was wrong. And you did it anyway. Maybe on another video, we'll discuss the nature of sin and why we do what we do. But as of right now, I want us to explore the results of it. David is seeking the mercy of God. And this is why he says, according to your tender mercies. And listen, David did not just come up with this out of his own mind. Exodus chapter 33, verse 19 says, I will be gracious unto whom that I will be gracious, and I will show mercy unto whom I will show mercy. David is familiar with this verse because he's read it. And therefore, he understands the grace and the mercy of God. The grace and the mercy of God is such that it's not necessary unless we've done wrong. And David, having done wrong, is soliciting that grace and that mercy. Brothers and sisters, don't run from God. That's what I'm really wanting to get you to understand. Satan, the enemy who caused you to do the thing you did, is the same person who wants you to think that you cannot go back to God. You've gone too far. You've looked at this material for far too many times. You've said the words that you've spoken too many times. You've felt the emotions and then acted out upon them too many times. And that is the trick and the deception of Satan. Mercy is the gift for the sinner, given to us by the lover of your soul and my soul. Yes, Jesus hurts when we do the things that we do. But like a loving, level-headed, disciplined parent who's now disciplining you, he's only hurting because he knows ultimately that your decision is going to cause greater pain and misery for you. And I want you to think about that. You and I can come and solicit the mercy of God at any time. And I got to make sure that you know that. Don't forget to subscribe or follow and leave your comments as to where you are. There's no shame. We want to hear from you. My cell number is 256-441-3556. And I want you to feel free to contact me at any time. Here is something that David presents to you and I in this first verse of Psalms 51. Remember that we started the verse by reading David's words here, which said, have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. Then he says, according unto the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. But why did David say this? When we commit wrong, no matter what it is, normally we are only wanting to appease the hurt, the separation, or the pain that we feel as a result of what we've done. Let me make that a bit more clear. We come to God because we know there's a separation and we want to fix it, much like we did with our parents. We don't like the fact that our parents are angry. And we don't feel any deep conviction, really. But what we feel is a bit of embarrassment. And because we want things to go back to normal, we seek to make amends. But I want you to see how what David said here was much deeper than this. David is not just asking to forgive me. You know how it is when we pray, Lord, forgive me. And then the next day we go back and we do it again. And our record shows that we are constantly asking God to forgive us for the same thing. Why? Because there's never really a desire to change. When David says here, according to thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions, what he's really saying is remove them from your record, but remove them from my heart, so that I cannot and will not do this again. Because this one experience is enough for me to experience the fact that I don't like what I'm feeling. I don't like this separation. I don't like this guilt or this shame. The truth of the matter is that we like the pleasure so much that we grin and bear the result of the shame that comes with it. And David is teaching us in his prayer that simply asking for forgiveness is not enough. You know, I love the song by Donnie McClurkin, We Fall Down But We Get Up. I want you to stop and think about the question that I'm about to propose to you. Are we doing more falling down than standing up? And only you can answer that question. Now, if you didn't believe me, I want you to go to verse 2 where David says, he clearly emphasizes what he said in verse 1. What does he say in verse 2? Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity. So that doesn't mean today I'm going to spark up a cigarette because I'm struggling and I was tempted and I just couldn't help myself. And then I pray right after I was done and I throw away the cigarettes. And then tomorrow I go and purchase another carton. I mean, that's what we've done. And listen, God has mercy even for that. Don't feel condemned if that's been your situation in any particular sin that you've been struggling with. But David is saying, look, I don't just want forgiveness. I want cleansing. And my question to you is, do you want cleansing? Or do you just want your conscience appeased because you sense that God is nowhere near you, or that at least you have made the separation and you are nowhere near God? Again, only you can answer that question. David says, for I acknowledge my sin before you, and my sin is ever before you. This is where we learn confession. Some of us think that it's enough to just think in our minds, God, you know, I did wrong, but I know you love me. You know my heart. And many of us walk in our day-to-day experience with this world just like that, never fully understanding what it means to confess your sin. Now we know again that David did something specific because the record is there in the Bible. And David is acknowledging it, and David here is acknowledging it. This is a great lesson for us. Why is it important for us to acknowledge what we've done? Well, the verse explains it. He says that it is always before him. So in essence, what he did is always standing and staring at him in the face, and he doesn't like this. It is thwarting his forward progress, freezing it, arresting it. So God, I'm acknowledging it so that it would get out of the way. Wow, that's important for us to know. And if we don't understand it, I'll repeat it again. When we don't acknowledge what we've done, we brush it under the rug. When family members or friends, maybe even others who we've hurt, want to discuss it so that they can get clarity, we get mad with them. We tell them, well, look, that's between me and God. That ain't none of your business. I already asked you to forgive me. You know, we get defensive. But the reason why that family member, friend, loved one, whomever, is wanting clarity and conversation is because it relieves the tension and it helps to remove it. It helps to put it away. Yes, it's going to be a difficult conversation, but it's one that must be had. And in like manner, it's the same with you and your walk with God. It's going to be a difficult conversation or prayer, because that's what prayer is, a conversation with God. But it's necessary to remove the thing so that the thing is not standing in front of you as a hindrance, stopping you from going forward in your walk with God. I'm going to leave you with this story. I am a grateful recovering addict. When I was actively involved in drugs, I would go in my ex-wife's purse and I would take whatever I could find, of course, to enable me to purchase the drugs I was looking for. Many times she would ask me, Andre, do you know what happened to this amount of money? And of course I would lie. One day I felt God speaking to me quite loudly. No, I didn't hear an audible voice, but there was conviction that came over me that let me know that I was not completely content. And for a long time, I couldn't figure out why. But God's Spirit spoke to me and told me that I wasn't happy because of the way I was living. So I asked, what do I do? How do I fix this? And God led me to Psalms chapter 51, like we're going through it now. And as I started studying it and reading it, it wasn't just once or twice. It was over a period of months that I would go back repeatedly to this verse. And I would look over it and read it and look over it and meditate on it and ask God to make it real in my life. And He did. He made it very real. And I remember He made it so real that one day I remember Him saying to me, it's because of the sin and the lie. The sin was the lie, that you feel the way that you do. You've been lying to your wife, and please know that I wasn't only lying to her. I was lying to many people, but I was lying also to myself. And it was not until I got honest, as we saw here in chapter 51 of the book of Psalms in verse 1, 2, and 3, that I began to feel peace and deliverance from what I was experiencing. What was I experiencing? I was experiencing guilt. I was experiencing great shame. And I knew that it was time for a change. I did not want to live this way any longer. So what did I do? I didn't just play with it in my mind and say, well, that would be a good thing to go and tell my wife at the time that I had done what I had lied and said I didn't do. I mustered up the courage and the faith in God. And I went to her and I told her the truth. Well, you may be wondering what happened. We stayed married for a long time after that. Just know that God is good. I pray, in fact, I know as I pray that this message has been a blessing to you. Share it with a friend, a family member, a loved one. Like I said earlier, take the link and post it on your social media platforms and let others know that there's a message that they can benefit from as you did. Don't forget to subscribe, and you be blessed.